What we eat directly impacts not just our own body and mind, but also the larger society and planet Earth. Overconsumption of meat has been one of the most hotly debated topics in the climate action and degrowth circles lately.
We degrowthers, we talk about downscaling production and consumption to reduce our carbon emissions, our fossil fuel usage, and our materials usage, right? So what does this have to do with our harmless burger?
Well, Lucas, everything. Meat consumption is the leading cause of greenhouse gas emissions, land use changes, and zoonotic diseases, an example of which is COVID-19. So let's see how eating less meat could save ourselves and our planet.
Welcome to the big bad world of industrial farming. As we speak, 4 mega food corporations own 80% of the world meat market. And together, these corporations already are responsible for more annual greenhouse gas emissions than ExxonMobil, Shell, or BP. Worldwide, billions goes into subsidizing the industry. So no wonder the chicken on your plate is increasingly affordable. And it's not just about the companies that produce the meat. If we look at the global meat industrial complex, it also includes big pharma who produce the antibiotics and the transport industry responsible for that Argentinian beef tenderloin in Europe. So, the world didn't suddenly develop a taste for meat. No, it has been carefully constructed through lobbying, subsidies, and hiding the negative effects from the social environment. No wonder why so little has been done about it. It's not a religion of meat, it's a religion of profit.
Is it realistic to expect the meat industry to stop supplying their products altogether? We think yes, but it definitely won't happen over a short-term period. Altering their business could be achieved with external motivators applied to the industry gradually. Therefore, we would like to present 3 policy changes that will smoothen our transition towards eating more plant-based proteins. Firstly, we propose a gradual transfer of subsidies from meat, animal feed, and dairy industries to industries producing plant-based foods and protein crops. Currently, the subsidies for livestock-based products provided by the United States amount to $38 billion US, which, for example, is 100 times more than what is allocated to aiding the production of fruits and vegetables. Gradually shifting these subsidies to industries that produce alternatives to meat would not only encourage the meat industry to change direction, but most importantly, would uncover the illusion that meat is cheaper than plant-based proteins. Alongside this subsidy transfer, our policymakers will have to resist the interests of the meat industry, trying to set regulatory barriers for the producers of plant-based protein. For an environment-conscious meat consumer to find alternatives from the grocery store, the plant-based products must avoid the destiny of milk alternatives, which, for example, in EU have been forced to be named a beverage of almond, soya, etc. To reduce meat consumption, vegetable patties must be permitted to be named burgers. And when the protein is formed in a long, thin shape, a sausage. The third policy designed to increase plant-based protein in meat products, as it was proposed by the TAP Coalition for the EU, takes into consideration the interests of multiple stakeholders. First of all, it keeps the planet happy. Imagine a scenario where 10% of animal origin ingredients in every sausage, steak, or burger would be required to be replaced with plant-based protein. This will amount into a global annual decrease of 32 million tons of produced meat, or being more dramatic, would free up roughly 3.5% of our planet's habitable territory. Secondly, the policy will keep the consumers happy. We already know that in addition to meat products consist also of bone mass, skin, and viscera. In this case, would you complain about a light meat product that has a 10% increase in a healthy plant-based protein? Do you think you would even feel that difference? And finally, this policy will also keep the meat industry happy. Similar to how the oil industry is shifting towards renewable energy, a 10% decrease in meat production can be replaced with investing in the crops of plant-based protein. With an emphasis on the gradual transition to plant-based protein, these policies respect the values of equality and a plurality of thought of the degrowth narrative. While taking care of the environment, they make sure that everybody has enough time to rethink their diet and their means of income.
Our next policy is actually a combination of 3 different measures, and all of them have to do with taxes. Yes, you heard right, taxes. Nobody likes taxes except for government, who use taxpayers' money to either give public services or to give subsidies. Well, we already spoke about reducing subsidies to meat industry. Now let's look at increasing tax. First up, it's VAT, value-added tax. Well, our proposal is simple. Increase VAT on meat-based products and reduced VAT on plant-based products. In fact, this is not something new. This has already been done for alcohol, cigarette, and yes, sugar. Coming back to meat, in Germany, there is already a proposal to increase VAT on meat from 7% to 19%. In a recent survey done on German, French, and Dutch consumers, 88% said they are either neutral or very supportive about increasing tax on meat. But will this finally help? Consider this. In Mexico, the sugar consumption went down by 9.7% by the second year after the so-called sin tax was introduced. Tax proposal number 2 is to levy a carbon emission tax on meat. About 15% of all the human emissions can be accounted for by meat-related emissions alone, of which 41% comes from beef alone. Brazilian beef that is on your platter is actually taking 200 times more land usage and emitting 80 times more GHG gas than your European tofu. Of course, a Brazilian meat and European tofu, they don't taste the same. But have you ever thought that who is accounting for it, or who's even paying for this extra impact on Earth? Speaking of Brazilian beef, do you know that food miles are simply ignored or treated as external factors while calculating its environmental impact? Due to lack of proper import taxation on meat products, that jet-lagged tenderloin, which has traveled 10,000 miles from South America, is costing less on your platter than the meat from your neighborhood farm. But who pays for the ticket? So here comes the third tax option, higher import tax on meat. The combined impact of all these 3 taxes would ensure that money flows out from the highly subsidized meat industry into other alternatives which are more climate friendly. And overall, it will have the effect on not only changing producer behavior but also impacting consumer behavior when it comes to meat consumption.
Empowering individual choice in the global food system has great potential to create multiple benefits for individuals, communities, and the environment. Mandatory environmental labeling that aims to increase awareness on the unsustainability of meat can be an important first step for policymakers to encourage consumers to accept additional future interventions on meat consumption. So let's try to imagine our regular visit to our local grocery store under this scenario. We're having a lovely Sunday barbecue, and in addition to vegetables, we're going to beat shop for some ribs, some burger patties, maybe even some cuts of steak. The meat compartment will have various packaged meat products marked with different color-coded emoji icons at the side of the packaging. So in addition to our regular nutritional information, we now will also be able to purchase the products that have a lower carbon footprint and that are locally produced without having to think too much about it. So 2/3 of the consumers in the UK already support this idea of carbon labeling, and some manufacturers from other industries, such as Oatly, the oat-based milk alternative, have already begun to record the carbon footprint and the origin of all the products on their packaging. Providing additional point of purchase information, such as these carbon and origin-based labels, could be an effective pathway to reduce meat consumption. But given the complexity of the factors underlying the climate impact of food, such as the ingredients, their packaging, and the food miles, it makes it kind of difficult to assess the chain of production. But nonetheless, while this may be true, we are already seeing a rise in independent institutes that have successfully started measuring greenhouse gas emissions throughout the production life cycle. And as long as sustainably committed companies are transparent and open to criticism, carbon footprint measurements will only become more accurate and more inclusive as time goes on. So now that we've looked at the policy options, Michael, I guess we're done.
Lucas, I don't think so, because policy alone won't reduce meat consumption. People have to actually practice degrowth on their meat diet. And I'm not so sure that's going to be easy.
Well, I guess there's only one way to find out. Let's call on a couple of meat reducers on a vegetarian dinner party and ask them about their journey. But don't worry, Michael. I'm sure we can all cook a hearty meatless meal together.
Man, I'm already hungry.
Like, that's why you don't care why you're vegan. You're vegan because that's what you want to be. Like, you found it inside you. But
yeah, I think it's important that it comes from you, no? It's change that you don't. I mean, it doesn't make sense that it's
Firstly, because it's morally and ethically wrong what we are doing with animals. And secondly, because being vegan probably is the best way to protect the environment. And thirdly, because not being vegan contributes to the world hunger, because 70% of the world cereals production goes to feed animals.
I realized that I don't need it as a privileged person that I am, so I have the resources enough to not be contributing in the extensive production that is massive.
We're treating the world as humankind, yeah, especially global north, no? So I was looking for this coherence in my life, and yeah, to act daily a little bit more aligned with how I think things should be, I guess.
I don't think it was a challenge to become vegan. It was hard to spread the word, I would say. People that don't take you serious if you're not a scientist or a doctor or a nutrition.
To me, my environment, because like right now, the people that I'm surrounded with, it's really easy to have this lifestyle and to be cooking together and eating together?
I guess it would be both social and also the fact that I've been used to eating meat and cooking meat my whole life, and I mean, to be honest, I've got pretty good at cooking it. So I mean, I would have to, you know, I guess change the way I actually cook and like think otherwise, but I wouldn't mind it.
I would say don't go crazy. Try to find your own way. Do your own research, and yeah, don't trust to the big media and go to alternative source of information.
So I would say not to get super stressed, like go with your own limits. Maybe you don't have to be vegetarian or vegan completely. You just have to say where is your limit. So maybe it's okay for you to buy the meat coming from a non-intensive production factory.
Maybe don't lose hope, because at the end this is contagious, and I maybe didn't expect that some friends from Mallorca, that is where I am from, would also they felt inspired by my like decision, and now they're not eating meat. So that's something that I didn't think it could happen.
Well, I would guess is knowledge. You know, like I can't be in denial anymore. Just being surrounded by people that actually knows what's going on with the environment, and knowing that eating meat actually fucks up the whole environment. Sorry for my French, but you know, it is what it is, man. You gotta make some kind of effort towards the environment. So I want to bring my contribution in some ways, but I'm not perfect.